The miracles of Moses. Were they supernatural or scientific? The hidden truth. Dear brother, dear sister, peace be with you. But prepare for a truth that may shake your deepest convictions about faith and science. Welcome to the portal to the unknown. Today, we are going to confront one of the most fascinating and debated narratives in human history, the miracles of Moses. Throughout history, few accounts have captured the imagination and faith as much as the extraordinary events attributed to this prophet. From the plagues that plagued Egypt to the dramatic parting of the Red Sea, these narratives are pillars of millennia-old beliefs and cultures. But what really happened? Were these events supernatural manifestations of a divine power? Or could they have more earthly, perhaps even symbolic explanations, opening a true portal to the unknown for history? Dive with us into this fascinating investigation to unravel one of the greatest enigmas of antiquity. This message is not easy, but it is urgent. Listen carefully. Moses, a central figure in three of the world's major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is portrayed as a prophet, leader, and liberator. His actions, as described in the sacred texts of the book of Exodus, defy logic and science, seeming like direct interruptions to the natural order of the universe, orchestrated by God himself. But the line between myth and historical reality is often thin, and it is precisely at this boundary that our curiosity and the need for a deeper look reside. Religious hypocrisy in this case can be to accept a narrative without questioning it, or, on the contrary, to reject it entirely without seeking its depth. Before we continue, if you are fascinated by historical mysteries and unsolved enigmas, consider subscribing to the channel and activating notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our next intriguing videos. Join our community of explorers of knowledge. The first of the 10 plagues is perhaps one of the most shocking. All the water in the Nile and in all the sources in Egypt turned into blood. Exodus chapter 7, verse 21. Fish died, and the water became undrinkable, causing great suffering. Was this an act of divine magic, or is there a scientific explanation for such a phenomenon? Some scholars suggest a massive proliferation of red algae, like a red tide, could have colored the waters, killing aquatic life and making the water unfit for consumption. Another theory points to pollution of the river caused by volcanic ash or red soil minerals, which would have had a similar toxic effect. The spiritual persecution of the Hebrew people who depended on the river is fought with the contamination of the source of life for their oppressors, regardless of whether the cause was natural or supernatural. After the water turned to blood, the plagues intensified with an invasion of frogs, Exodus chapter 8, verse 6, followed by lice and flies, Exodus chapter 8, verse 17, verse 24. Could these events be a sequence of interconnected natural disasters, like a kind of biological and ecological domino effect? The death of fish in the contaminated water, which were natural predators of frogs and insects, could have forced the frogs to leave the river in search of food and moisture. The subsequent putrefaction of organic matter in the river and the lack of natural predators for the insects would have led to a population explosion of lice and flies, creating an unhealthy and intolerable environment for the Egyptians. The modern idolatry of the time, which worshipped gods like Heket, a fertility goddess with a head of frog, is ridiculed and confronted by God himself.
The sequence of disasters continues with a plague that affects livestock, Exodus chapter 9, verse 6, followed by boils and sores that afflict both Egyptians and their animals, Exodus chapter 9, verse 10. Could these diseases be a direct result of the unhealthy conditions created by the previous plagues? Water contamination, the proliferation of insects, and the decomposition of frogs and fish would have created a perfect breeding ground for the spread of bacterial and viral diseases. The lack of hygiene, the stressful environment, and the debility of the population would have weakened the immune systems of the Egyptians and their animals, making them easy targets. God's silence on the exact origin of these diseases is an invitation to reflection. Nature often is an instrument in His hands to fulfill His purposes. The plagues become even more devastating with an unprecedented hailstorm mixed with fire, destroying crops and trees. Exodus chapter 9, verse 23. Soon after, swarms of locusts devour what was left. Exodus chapter 10, verses 13 to 15. Extreme weather phenomena, such as severe hailstorms, are known to occur in desert regions due to atmospheric instability. And once crops are damaged, this can attract large swarms of locusts, which migrate in search of food, completing the agricultural devastation. The precise timing and the exclusivity of the plague to the Egyptians still seem to challenge mere coincidence. The ninth plague involved 3 days of total darkness, so dense that it was impossible to see. Exodus chapter 10, verses 21 to 23. A possible natural event would be a massive and prolonged sandstorm, the Khamsin, which could completely obscure the sun for days. The 10th plague, the death of all Egyptian firstborn, is the most difficult to reconcile with natural explanations, seeming like a direct and definitive divine act. This final plague is the turning point, forcing Pharaoh to free the Hebrews. Exodus chapter 12, verses 29 to 32. Genuine repentance only came after the irreparable loss, showing the hardness of the human heart and the need for severe judgment. The most spectacular narrative is, without a doubt, the parting of the Red Sea, Exodus chapter 14, verses 21 to 28, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry land while the waters closed in on the Egyptian armies. A naturalist theory suggests that a strong east wind that blew during the night could have, for a brief period, exposed a shallow portion of a lake or marsh in the region, allowing for the crossing. However, the precise timing, the creation of a wall of water on both sides, and the subsequent flooding to drown the Egyptians still seem to challenge coincidence and point to the intervention of a power that commands nature. After the crossing, the Israelites face a shortage of food in the desert, and God provides manna, Exodus chapter 16, verse 31, a bread from heaven, and quail, Exodus chapter 16, verse 13. Naturally, manna can be compared to insect secretions or desert plant saps that harden and are edible, although in limited quantities. Quail, in turn, are migratory birds that travel in large flocks and could have been carried by the wind and dropped exhausted, becoming a temporary but abundant food source. However, the regularity, quantity, and the fact that it ceased the moment they entered the Promised Land still suggest a divine providence that transcends mere randomness of nature. Another crucial miracle is when Moses strikes a rock and water gushes out to quench the thirst of all the people. Exodus chapter 17, verse 6. Although it seems like a purely supernatural act, some rock formations in the desert, such as underground aquifers or hidden springs, could be accessed with adequate knowledge or brute force at specific points. However, the precision and abundance described still raise questions about divine intervention, which uses the natural to accomplish the supernatural. On Mount Sinai, Moses receives the 10 Commandments amidst thunder, lightning, and a thick cloud. Exodus chapter 20, verse 18. This event is the pinnacle of the relationship between God and His people. While the atmospheric manifestations can be attributed to severe storms and volcanic phenomena, although Sinai is not an active volcano, the delivery of the tablets of the law and the theological depth of the moment transcend any purely natural explanation. God's judgment on disobedience and His holiness are revealed undeniably at that moment. The tension between a naturalist explanation and divine intervention is at the heart of the debate about the miracles of Moses. For many believers, the literalness of these events is fundamental to faith, proving the existence of an active and powerful God in human history. For others, the search for scientific explanations does not diminish the spiritual message. On the contrary, it may even deepen it, revealing the grandeur of nature and God's ability to use it to fulfill His purposes. The genuine repentance of the nation of Israel, which witnessed these events, was the clearest proof of God's power. From a historical and archaeological point of view, the lack of direct, non-biblical evidence for the events of Moses and the Exodus represents a challenge. There are no Egyptian records of a mass escape of slaves or of the plagues. This leads some to question the literal scale of the events, suggesting that the narratives may have grown and embellished over time, serving more as a mythological foundation for a people's identity than as a journalistic record. However, the silence of the Egyptian records about such a humiliating defeat can also be interpreted as an intentional suppression of events that would tarnish the image of a god pharaoh. Even if the events did not occur exactly as described, the symbolic power of the narratives of Moses is undeniable. The plagues can symbolize the fall of empires and the futility of oppression. The crossing of the Red Sea represents liberation and spiritual rebirth. The manna and water from the rock symbolize divine providence and the people's dependence on God. These symbols offer eternal lessons about faith, resilience, justice, and the search for freedom, regardless of their historical literalness. The end times will not be an unprecedented event. They already have a foretaste in the miracles of Moses. So, were the miracles of Moses real or symbolic? Perhaps the answer is not an or, but an and. For many, they are literally real, evidence of God's power. For others, they are narratives rich in symbolism, full of timeless truths about the human condition and the search for transcendence. The beauty lies in the ambiguity, in the ability of these stories to inspire and provoke reflection through the millennia, challenging us to ponder the line between the natural and the supernatural. Regardless of your interpretation, the story of Moses continues to be a testament to the human capacity to believe in the impossible and to seek meaning in the face of the unknown. What is your opinion? Do you believe the miracles of Moses were literal supernatural events, or do you see a deep symbolism in them? Share your ideas in the comments below. We would love to know what you think.